Episode 9 of Your Friends and Neighbors begins with Coop preparing for a potential life behind bars. He's looking at everything with a different perspective now, and this becomes important for his story going forward. Meanwhile, Mel meets with Barney, who hands over the deed to the house. Coop has signed his half over to Mel, playing defense and prepping for the worst. Mel is not happy and marches over to speak to Coop. What's going on with Allie and Bruce? Of course, she also has unresolved drama with Sam as well, exemplified by Mel and Sam passing each other as they leave. While they avoid one another, Allie is not in the same mindset. She wants to get to the crux of the issue regarding Coop's situation. He doesn't want to talk, though, and instead things get awkward when the conversation turns to Allie's sex life. Allie reveals that she's been sleeping with Bruce, but she's also off her meds because that's the only way she gets pleasure out of it. Unfortunately, this also causes her to derail her performance at the bar, especially when she gets up on stage and spills her heart out, along with revealing she had sex with Bruce in Hunter's bed. It's not a complete disaster, though, as Allie manages to get the crowd to chant, "Fuck Bruce." Back home, though, Coop is adamant that Allie needs to be back on her meds, and he retorts that things aren't looking so hot, and they need to prep for the possibility of him being thrown behind. Bars, does Coop take the deal? After dropping off a watch for Hunter, Coop speaks to Tori. She's no longer with her boyfriend, which we saw briefly in the last episode, and there's a really nice moment where she heads downstairs and cuddles her dad, sobbing in his arms. The morning, Coop shows up to see Kat, entertaining her idea of this plea deal. She thinks she can close at 8 years behind bars and he'll get out after 6 for good behavior. If this goes to trial, though, things could go south quickly. Coop eventually concedes. Mel shows up to see Coop next and questions him about the plea deal. Mel calls him selfish and how he's giving up, begging him to fight back with everything he has instead. This conversation works to change his mind, and Coop decides not to take the deal. Who killed Paul? Looking over the evidence, there are clear inconsistencies, and in particular, regarding Samantha's phone records. Given she and Coop messaged and called a lot, his number isn't anywhere in the logs. This leads them to realize that Sam has 2 phones. Detective Lynn can't do anything, though, unless they get this phone and tie it to Sam. Kat sees this as a dead end and decides to give up, but Coop is not ready to stop fighting yet. He tracks down Elena and asks for help. Elena agrees to do this favor for him, and they break into Sam's house together, looking around for the burner. Instead, what Elena finds is a drawer with a hidden compartment, complete with several passports and a suicide note from Paul. Adding further weight to this, it turns out Paul shot himself, and then Sam shot him post-mortem, confirmed by Lynn's death report, to make it look like a murder. Sam also planted the gun inside Coop's car, although this all happened off-screen, and she did so because of her desperation to walk away with his money. So how did it come to this? What happened to Sam? Flashbacks confirm that when Sam left school, she wound up becoming a waitress. She was having sex with her boss, Paul, and given his wealth and security, agreed to marry him when he proposed. Sam also loses her accent here and does her best to fit in with the others. Sam buries any plans she may have had for a more glamorous life and leans into the family life instead. Sam convinces herself that she's happy, just like all the other couples here are doing, but in reality, she's miserable. This leads us into her having sex with Coop, but she's cynical the whole time, knowing he'll never really love her and doesn't want to settle down. Moving back to Boston, Sam received a call from Paul, high on antipsychotics and whiskey. He FaceTimes her and asks to meet her, but instead, he shows off his suicide note, gets a gun, and shoots himself live on video. Paul's life insurance policy, though, doesn't move to next of kin in the event of a suicide. Given Sam was only in this for the money and security for the kids, she works to stage the entire crime scene. She's had a burner for a while, and she heads back home to make it look like someone has murdered Paul, complete with hiding the suicide note rather than destroying it, go figure, and shooting Paul several times. The rest, as they say, is history. How is the situation resolved? Sam is resentful of Coop and the other men in the neighborhood, pointing out her sad life and how she couldn't let her kids be left with nothing. Through all of this, though, Sam is eventually arrested and Coop is acquitted. Now, Sam doesn't stay behind bars, because she technically hasn't killed anybody, but setting everything up as a murder scene is not exactly a great look. Coop is finally reunited with his kids and Mel, and they embrace with a warm hug when he makes it back home. A week later, Coop shows up at work and Jack reluctantly brings up why he's there. Turns out they've hit a wall with a prestigious client and they'll only deal with Coop. The company want him back, and along with a nice signing bonus, Coop decides to go all in. He wants 20% of the Swiss deal and 25% overall profit share. Jack is in a tough spot and doesn't really have a choice but to concede to Coop's demands. However, our titular character is still hedging his bets and wondering whether to go back or not. After beating the murder charges, the whole community show up at a charity gala where Coop is the talk of the town. Nick sits down with Mel and the pair talk. She apologizes for what's happened, but Nick knows that Mel still has feelings for Coop, and that'll never change. He kisses her on the cheek and walks away, seemingly resigned to the fact he'll never stack up. Mel decides she's going to fly solo for a while Coop does the exact same thing. In fact, he heads across the room and speaks to Jules, Chelsea's mum. She's the woman who has all the SAT scores in the drawer. He threatens her and her daughter, blackmailing them into choosing a different school rather than Princeton before walking away. How does Your Friends and Neighbors Season 1 end? Speaking of threatening, Allie heads over to Bruce's place that night and graffitis "Fuck Bruce" up on the garage. It's a nice way of wiping her hands of this scumbag, and when his wife finds this, she demands an explanation from her husband. Meanwhile, Coop decides not to go back to his old life. He snubs the plane ride over to Switzerland to close this deal and instead visits Jack Massey's house and steals a painting. As he takes off, the trunk opens in an amusing nod to the moments earlier in the season before he drives back home.